Welcome into a Wednesday edition of In Touch with Indiana Sports, powered by HoosierIllustrated.com. John Alden with you. Welcome to the middle of the week, and welcome to the beginning of a new era of Indiana basketball, as Indiana has already hired, right? Darian DeVries out of West Virginia, and that is what pretty much the entirety of today's show is going to be about. We've got a couple of different guests coming on. Ant Wright is making yet another appearance from the Full Ride Network. And then also a special guest from Mitchell Paige with a little more, nonsense than, the typical guest. I was actually planning on having Mitchell Paige on to, not do typical stuff before all of this Darian DeVries stuff happened. But thankfully, he's going to come on and, kind of just talk about a little bit about that. And then go into some football matters just for a brief moment. And then the primary reason that I had him on just for some goofy March Madness picks. And so that'll round out the show today. But and that's going to take up most of our time as well. So one thing just to keep in mind, we'll save some YouTube comments because there are plenty of them that you all have sent in, especially on last night's live reaction with myself and Kyler Staley. Appreciate you guys checking that out. We'll go over some of those comments. Any other comments you may have, let me know right now in the YouTube comments below, and we'll go over as many of them on Friday as we can. What do you think of Darian DeVries? Are you or are you happy? Are you underwhelmed? Are you surprised? How are you feeling on the hire right now? And I'm sure, honestly, many of your feelings will change on it over the next several days, because that's usually how these things go. Also, at the time, not necessarily at the time of this recording, but near the time of this recording, I believe he's currently having his introductory press conference with Indiana. So we'll also react to what he says from that on Friday as well. So plenty of stuff to get to over the next few days. And I'm going to try to bring on as many people as I can that will, provide really good insight on this new hire for Indiana. So without further ado, we're going to go ahead and get into what Ant Wright had to say on really how things have transpired over the last 24 hours and what he expects out of Darian DeVries as Indiana's next head coach. So without further ado, let's get into that segment right now. Joining me once again from the Full Ride Network, it is Mr. Ant Wright. Very quick return. And of course, we have a lot to talk about when it comes to kind of what's transpired in the last 24 hours with the Indiana job. But Ant, thanks as always for giving me the time.
Yeah, definitely, man. Anytime.
So let's just, get right into it. I was just telling you before we got rolling, like Indiana right now, it kind of feels like they're living in their own little world, their own little bubble, because as the rest of college basketball focuses on the NCAA tournament and March Madness, all that sort of stuff, Indiana's been solely focused on who is going to be their next head guy now that they were left out of the NCAA tournament. And of course, in pure Scott Dolson fashion, all of the names that had been thrown out, whether it be Ben McCollum, Brad Brownell, whoever it was over the last several weeks, it was none of those guys. And in fact, we didn't learn who it was going to end up being until within a few hours before it ended up being official yesterday, whenever Darian DeVries was named, or at least officially announced to be the Indiana head coach. So just kind of your initial thoughts on the way, I guess, kind of how everything played out, and then on Darian DeVries in general.
I mean, if it feels like that's who they were looking for kind of the whole time. I mean, yeah, there's the Brad Stevens and all that stuff, but you got to understand, bro, like Brad Stevens, like he's an admin chilling as his team is, as his franchise is, looking at, they're one of the favorites to win another NBA championship, right? Like he doesn't have to worry about these snot-nosed kids and parents asking about money and NIL. No, he gets to hang out and golf and have meetings on Zoom if he wants to. He doesn't have to grind anymore. Like he is chilling. He is chilling right now. So I don't see why you would have left the Celtics. Like it's an He's just in a real nice. He's in a real nice.
He's in a very cushy job.
Yes.
And there's nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that. It's just, the path that he's chosen to take.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And look, he's earned everything that's come to him, and it's but he is in such a nice situation. He's got franchise cornerstone players. It's not a hot mess, right? It's not like the Mavs where you just traded away your franchise player despite the defensive efficiencies. Like, he's one of the faces of the NBA. You figure it out, right? You don't trade away Luka Doncic. That's not what's going on. You got Jaylen Brown, you got Jason Tatum, you got all these, like, you have that formula, right? Why are you going to leave for Indiana to deal with NIL and all that stuff? And you know what? I'm pretty sure if he entertained it at all, what smart people do is that they talk to other people who they trust, who has been in this whole deal, right? You don't think he made a call to like Jay Wright or made a call to like Roy Williams and Kay and Tony Bennett and all these current coaches who are now in it, just to be like, yo, what's the deal? Like, what would my day-to-day look like? Am I coaching basketball players still, or am I coaching a bunch of entitled players who like want now and they'll give later? Like, what are we dealing with right now? And I just think it's really important for you to get someone who wants to be at Indiana, who really wants that grind, who really wants that, who wants to smoke, not someone who wants an easy job. It's not an easy job. It is a tough job. It is a demanding job, but the return on investment that you're going to get is going to be well worth it, right? It's not like you're at one of these jobs like Chris Collins, right? Incredible coach. He puts his blood, sweat, and tears in Northwestern, right? His fans they just went like 500. Their fans are like curdling with fear that he's going to leave for Villanova. Right?
Yes.
If you do what he's done in the same mindset as if it was Indiana, what are we talking about here? We're talking about second weekends year over year. And I'm not saying second weekends is the bar, but the second weekend gives you that, 2 games to a Final Four, right? 2 games to a Final Four. 2 games to a Final Four, right? Then you get there, it's 2 games to a national championship, right? Get to that second weekend continuously, you're going to be put into a situation to get to a Final Four, to possibly win a national championship. So, sorry for the long, drawn-out answer, but
no, it's okay.
No, man, it's you need someone who wants this, who really truly wants this, and it's not about a paycheck. It's about the resources, the brand, the potential that's there. And one thing I like about the DeVries thing is that he doesn't have a high major identity, right?
No, he was with Creighton as an assistant for what, like 16, 17 years, I read.
Yeah, perfect, right? He doesn't have, and no one's going to be like, oh, that's that assistant Creighton coach. No one's going to say that, right?
Yeah.
They're going to say, hey, DeVries, like, hey, once he becomes, if he does what he's supposed to do, he's that Indiana coach. Right.
And I think we'll know pretty quickly too, because I was reading something that John Fanta put out yesterday about kind of his work ethic. You were talking about work ethic earlier and how it kind of reminded him of someone like a Pat Kelsey at Louisville. And look at what has happened with the transformation of that program in 1 year. Now, I know Indiana isn't in as bad of shambles as Louisville was with Kenny Payne for 2 seasons, but this day and age, just like you laid out earlier, if Indiana has somebody who who is already understanding this new complicated landscape of NIL, transfer portal, like things are always going to be moving in and out of your program, it seems like, for the most part. And somebody who's going to embrace that, like DeVries more than likely will Indiana fans and those on the outside too, they'll know pretty quickly whether or not this is going to work, I feel like. I'm not saying people should be impatient, but I think there's enough evidence out there with other examples, like again, like the Pat Kelsey that I mentioned, that if Indiana will get results similar to what Louisville's gotten, to what Kentucky's gotten with Mark Pope, if Indiana is able to, or if DeVries is able to do exactly what many are now expecting him to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And, it's just because you have money, it doesn't mean that it's going to automatically work, right?
Correct.
There's a lot of rich people out here who have no clue how to invest their stuff and how to do all this and that. Like, it doesn't automatically mean you have to be a mind behind the money. And, you're looking at Kansas State, right? They had a bunch of money. You see what they did. Washington spent $2 million on Osibor. Like, you see what that did. When you're looking at someone like Pat Kelsey, like we just said, not only did he construct the correct roster, he lost starters for the year and continued to get better. Right? So
yes.
not only are you getting the right guys, you have the right mind. If someone throws a wrench in this thing, it's not going to just all implode. Like, it's like, no, we're going to figure things out, next man up, and get better. So someone like him, being able to go out there and get a guy like Javon Small. Javon Small, I was very, very high on coming out of Oklahoma State, and was hoping Indiana would get that guy, right? Because I'm like, look, you need a guard, you need a lead guard, someone who's a dog. Javon Small's right there. I think he could be one of the better guards in the country, and he was amazing for them this year, and the reason why they had a chance to get to an NCAA tournament.
What do you think of I've seen a lot of people talk about DeVries' son and now he's likely to be someone who could make a major impact at Indiana next year. Do you know much about him at all?
He's good, man. Tucker DeVries is good. I mean, you're talking about, all Big Ten player as soon as he steps on campus. Man, he's a big guard wing. Really, really tough matchup. I mean, he could do anything he wants to do. Anything he wants to do. Indiana fans are gonna love him. He is a dog. He is so good.
Another thing too, we've already seen a couple of guys, Gabe Cupps and Malik Renew, and I believe that's it, unless I've missed something at this point, who have put their name in the transfer portal. You'll likely see a few others do the same as well, whether they're going to return or not. Do you foresee any of the current guys on Indiana's roster, whether they've declared or not, do you see a good majority of them, if any, feeling like they'll fit into DeVries and what he wants to do? And I know that's, again, I know I never, a lot, sometimes I feel like I ask you loaded questions. I don't mean to do so.
No. I like this. I think Miles Rice, his defense in the latter part of the year, I think really stuck out to me. Really, really stuck out to me. I think keeping Miles is going to be big.
Yeah, Kyler had mentioned this to me yesterday as well. He thought Miles Rice could really thrive under DeVries, and not that Woodson utilized him incorrectly all the time. It just felt like it didn't work the way that a lot of people thought it was going to.
It just didn't make sense. It was always super cluttery, and there's a reason why he was much more comfortable when they went to the one big, right?
Yeah.
Which is what everyone wanted for years now, right?
Forever, yes.
Right. And then they do it, and then all of a sudden you see it works. It's probably bittersweet for Indiana fans where they're like, oh my gosh, like if we had just done this earlier, who knows? But either way, I think Miles Rice, just from a defensive standpoint, we've seen what he could do offensively, right? in waves, right? Not always consistent of what we saw, but I don't think he was able to be who he always wanted to be.
Yeah.
Then you would, of course, see in the waves, and that's why you saw some of the inconsistencies. But then he had some bursts where you're just like, oh, there he is right there. There he is. But I just think on the defensive end, man, he's quick, he's fast, he has good hands, gets out in transition well, shares the ball, has good vision. He showed this year he could be a capable shooter. So he's someone who I would really, really want. Not sure about Luke Goody's status in terms of
That's true.
being a fifth year. Not sure there. I think you would want Goody, especially to be paired with Tucker. Man, I'd hate to say it, but I mean, do you know what Mbako's doing yet?
I don't think, again, unless I've missed something this morning, I don't think Mbako has made a decision at the moment. To my knowledge, the only two, again, at the time of this recording, is Gabe Cupps and Malik Renew. And then there was talk over a couple of days ago that Bryson Tucker, which I believe that was a false rumor that he was jumping in the portal. He ended up coming out and saying that wasn't the case. So again, unless I've missed something, I believe it's only two guys.
So we know for sure now because they said that's not the case. Whenever they
Bryson Tucker literally went out on social media and said, whatever these rumors are, this is nonsense, pretty much.
So we just got to wait a week until he's in there.
I guess. I mean, it's a lot of those guys, whenever they're going through a coaching change, I think now that we've seen enough years of this, they tend to wait around and really see what kind of the new vibe is. And again, I've never been in a locker room or anything like that, so I can't speak on it personally. But just seeing the way that certain players have approached it in the last few seasons, I do feel like many of them take that approach nowadays.
I agree, and you should take that approach because you're putting the cards in your hands if you wait. Because if you wait and you give this guy a chance, he's going to appreciate you for being here, right? And if now there's a conversation that he wants you to go look for other opportunities, that's fine. I'll just go, right? But if you end up leaving, portaling, and then you realize nobody's in the market for you, and you're like, hey, what's up? It's your boy. I'm back. They're like, we don't have a spot for you.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's the thing. There until there's regulations or stricter rules, whatever you want to call it on this, when you see hundreds, if not, I don't know if thousands would be too many, but you see all of the guys going to the portal, you know that there's, especially for the big name schools, if you're somebody like a Malik Renew, like it's not going to be hard for you to find a place, I wouldn't imagine. But if you're looking for, just finding a new place to stand out and you don't have necessarily a whole lot to show for it, from where you were at previously, it's going to be harder to kind of sell yourself to other programs when there's such a huge influx of options for people to choose from.
Absolutely. And you either want to you either want to leave super early or super late, in my opinion. Because if you're early, there's not a lot of people in there. Because it's that bell curve, right? Early, nobody's in there. But then as time goes,
the more teams that are eliminated for the NCAA tournament over the next few weeks.
Yeah. Then at the very end, you want to leave late. It's gonna be like now you're leaving when it's been picked over, right? And now you go in. Now it's like, ooh, now I want this, I want that. That's what happened with like Cam Spencer, right? For Rutgers.
Yes.
He's all Rutgers, goes home for a weekend, comes back, right? Goes portal late because he got poached by a school. But once he went into the portal, bigger schools came in after him, and he ends up at UConn. Right? UConn is not the team who like poached him out of there. So I mean, this stuff happens so much, man. But it's always good to leave like early or late. You don't want to leave when everybody's leaving. You don't want to do that.
Yeah. And I know what I'm about to ask you, it's obviously very early to tell because you have no idea what the roster is going to look like.
Power
You really
rankings,
don't know.
starting lineup.
Well, not starting line, but just like what would you if you were, and you don't even have to say it from a fan perspective, I guess, but like just as somebody on the outside looking in, but you're also very plugged into the Big Ten, of course. As somebody who's watched this play out, if you were just kind of making an early guess on what you would expect out of Indiana in year one with DeVries, how big of a step up would you be guessing from what you've gotten with Woodson over the last few years?
I mean, you're going to get a different style of play. Do you want some advanced statisticals?
Go ahead. I did when we did our live reaction last night, I did see that his current team at West Virginia, which of course, they barely missed the NCAA tournament, they ranked 343rd in offense, 68 something points per game, which I know that's going to really turn off a lot of Indiana fans. It's going to remind people of the Archie Miller days. But one thing that we kind of through, digging a little bit deeper, we kind of figure out he still runs a more balanced style. Like even though it is slower, he does have guys that can usually shoot the ball.
Yeah. So if we're looking at what he did at Drake, they were 139th in pace in his final year at Drake. If I look at West Virginia, where they were, I can look at that right now for you. They were one of the slower teams. They were outside of the top 300. I don't think he wants to play that way. I think he wouldn't mind. I don't think his team had enough firepower to play very fast, right? I think he had to make that adjustment when his kid goes down. You lose, you lose one of your two superheroes. So the less possessions, the better you should be, right? So
makes sense.
When it comes down to just his years at Drake, right? In his final 2 years, he lost one home game. I think it's super important that you got to be able to take care of home. When it comes to Indiana fans will love this stat. You ready for this?
Yeah, give it to me.
All right. Of the jump shots taken, the final year at Drake, 9% were between 17 feet and the 3-point line.
Yeah. And that's definitely something that's going to now he'll want to have one really good big. You've got to have at least one formidable big or formidable, however you say it. You got to have at least one in the Big Ten to be able to compete.
Have to
night in and night out. But
to.
In this day and age, to compete nationally and be one of the elite programs in the entire country, you have to find that perfect complementary balance that I feel like for the last few years, Purdue kind of mastered that for a while. That they had a generational talent in Zach Edey that really helped out a lot as well. But
he may have been the most dominant player in college history.
Yeah, and that's even no, you're not wrong about it. It's weird to kind of say it out loud, but how often have we ever had, at least in the modern era of college basketball, had somebody who wins National Player of the Year twice?
Yeah, like we're talking about man, him and Ralph Sampson, you could put them in the same sentence without even thinking about it. And Ralph Sampson back then was a beast. And Zach Edey probably outweighs him by 100 pounds. Which is nuts, right? And he's taller than Ralph.
Yeah.
And Ralph was playing against a lot smaller players too. Here's what I'll say. I think it is going to be a big wait and see because we don't know who's going to come from West Virginia, not only with Tucker, right?
Yeah.
Are they going to bring – is Amani Hansberry going to come in too? He's a 6'6", 6'7" big, right? Is that going to play in the Big Ten? Are you going to bring in Sincere from West Virginia? Is Chester coming? Or is he going to try to stay for the West Virginia job? Will Chester's stomach being an Indiana coach, being a full-blown Illinois guy? I don't know. The checks cash just the same, Chester. Just so you know, like there's no 2-day Illini hold on the Indiana checks. That doesn't exist. But man, so I mean, like playing style. I'm like, you're gonna get like his teams at Drake. Like they played. They wanted to get out in transition. They wanted to run pick and roll, and they were spotting up, and they did all three very, very effectively. In spot up shooting, 93rd percentile. In the pick and roll, 96th percentile. In transition, they were scoring at 1.1 points per, and just highly efficient, man.
Last thing I want to ask you, and it's not even related to Indiana, then we'll wrap this thing up. First of all, congrats to your Michigan Wolverines winning the Big Ten Tournament Championship. What do you expect out of them in the NCAA tournament, the Wolverines?
We'll see, man, because like UCSD is a very annoying team, very unconventional. They're very they're just super annoying. They play this matchup man-to-man zone. They don't play anyone over 6'8". So it's one of those things where I'm wondering how they're going to adjust. Are they going to pressure the guards a little bit more? So, Wolf and Vlad have a tougher time. We'll see how that goes. I would love to see like a Michigan-Yale matchup. That'll be a lot of fun. Danny versus old school. I just think overall, man, it's I think Texas A&M will be a tough matchup because Michigan has struggled going up against really, really good guards, and I think Wade Taylor is very, very good. And Pharrell Payne is, from Minnesota. He's down there, I believe, or is he at Mississippi State? Do you know where he's at?
I think, man, it's one of those two, isn't it? I do remember that last year. I don't remember which one he's with.
That's such an ugly red.
Mississippi State is maybe the ugliest place. Like Starkville. I've heard Starkville is one of the ugliest places in the entire country.
it's in Mississippi. Okay, it is A&M. Yeah, it's A&M. Okay. So like Pharrell Payne, he's a very good player. Talking to bigs who have gone against him, they say that he's one of the more underrated players nationally out there with his motor and his skill set and what he brings. So it comes down to matchups, man. It comes down to matchups, and you got to play who you're given. And
as it's always the case, right?
That's how it goes. And you have no clue how your bracket is going to shake out.
Yep. Everyone always assumes like, oh, it's going to set up to be Auburn and Michigan in the Sweet 16 or Elite 8, whatever it may be. But, you never know who's going to end up playing spoiler and ruining all of those potential matchups. So, Ant, I appreciate your time as always. And again, good luck to your Wolverines in the NCAA tournament.
Appreciate it. I hope, Indiana can experience one here soon.
I saw they missed 7 of the last 9. That's even crazy to think
about. That's nuts. That's insane. That is crazy.
It is.
And they were both THD, right? What THD? TJD. So
Mike Woodson had 2. What is THD? I'm just trying to think what even just.
Yeah, I combined him with Hood Shafino.
TJD, Trace Jackson Davis.
Yeah, I messed him up and Jalen Hood Shafino. I put them together.
Okay. Yeah, both were Mike Woodson because Archie Miller missed all 4 of his attempts, and Tom Crean missed the last couple. If that makes
and shout out to Jalen Hood Shafino, man. He's doing well right now. Good for him.
He's in the got a G League contract now, right? Doing something.
No, man. I think he's been doing some NBA stuff.
Well, I knew he got let go from the Lakers. I couldn't remember who else he ended up signing with. Either way, it's
yeah, I think he's with the Sixers. I think he's with
yes. I thought he was with their G League affiliate, but maybe I'm wrong about that.
Oh man, no. I think he's been.
Now stun locked us on this.
Yeah, I think he's been doing all right. Let me see.
Because the Sixers have some issues
for Philly. The last 3 games in the last 5 days, he's had 12, 19. 5 points. So I mean, like
there you
that
go.
one game was the
If you're an
first
Indiana
win.
fan looking for something else to cling on to right now that has Hoosier ties, then go watch some Jalen Hood-Schifino if you have the opportunity.
Tofino's playing a little bit right now. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, like,
Again,
yeah.
oh, go
And
ahead.
close games too. These aren't blowouts. Like one was a 5-point win at Dallas, had 19. The other one was a overtime loss at Houston. It's a very good team right now. Had 12. I
Yeah.
mean, he's playing good ball.
Good for him. I'm glad that he's doing well. But Ant,
Yeah.
again, appreciate it. Enjoy the tournament, and we'll talk again sometime in the future.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. One day we're gonna I would have liked UNC Indiana though. That would have been fun.
It would have been fun, wouldn't it?
Anthony Leo versus RJ Davis. Like, man, right to the veins, man.
We'll never know, though. We'll never know.
We'll never know. We'll never know. You just had to.
And that's the other thing. Indiana wouldn't be hiring DeVries right now if they were playing in the NCAA tournament. Who knows what they would have ended up doing?
We would have to wait for DeVries, maybe. But
maybe they would have. Maybe.
Or
I appreciate your time as always.
Or Brad Stevens would have been there.
He who shall not be named. I have been referring to him as he who shall not be named for the last few months, just because it's always a shot in the dark. Of course, a big thanks to Ant Wright for his time always, and appreciate everything he has to say. And he's as I mentioned before, he's a good time guest. He's somebody that I've really enjoyed having on the last several times that he's made appearances here on In Touch with Indiana Sports. So we'll without a doubt have him on in the future. So appreciate all he had to say, and we'll go and move into something a little I was gonna say a little more fun. I hate to act like what was just presented was not fun. I hope it was, but we always have a great time with Mitchell Paige, and it's been a very long time, a couple of months since he's made an appearance on this show. So now we'll transition into his segment where we continue to talk a little bit about Darian DeVries, as well as some NCAA tournament matters and a little bit of Indiana football. Joining us for the first time in a while, of course, it is none other than Mitchell Paige, former, scholarship turned, I don't know, I haven't said it in so long.
Dude, I'm an old man now.
Yeah, he's a human being. He's a dad. Man. He's more than a former nonsensical term that I used to use. He's his own dude now.
Yeah, I want to be eventually Indiana media personality. That would be awesome. That's
you kind of are. You're like a jack of all trades media personality. You show up wherever you're asked to show up. I feel like
I've been in hibernation a little bit on Twitter, just with Maggie growing up. She's 9 months old.
Look at that! Wow.
I've held back a little bit during basketball season. I think it's mostly because I'm not as educated on basketball as I am on football. Not really educated on football either, but follow that with a little more blind passion. So we're ramping back up. Spring has sprung. Pads are on in Bloomington, but we got bigger news, dude. We got a hiring that happened today.
That's true. And yeah, that's something that whenever I initially asked you to come on, I did not expect the news of Darian DeVries to happen
in
the manner in which it did. It happened so fast. It happened, honestly, very similarly to the Kurt Signetti hire, because everybody was throwing names around, then everybody was, having their opinion on this or that. And when it came down to it, Scott Dolson does what Scott Dolson does, and he kind of just works under the radar while everybody else is doing the talking up above, and it ended up being somebody that nobody had really mentioned until I guess Tuesday. We're recording this on Tuesday, but it comes out on Wednesday, but until yesterday.
Yeah, if you don't trust Dolson in the way that he does things, I think basketball is just one of many awesome hires for the athletic program that he's made. You look at all the sports, he's really lifted all the ships in that athletic department. I don't really know anything about this dude, but if he passes the Dolson test, I'm a believer. And I think that as I was watching the basketball season, it was kind of eye-opening because I'm a basketball fan too, but watching, and maybe it's different because it was the first year that Indiana really had something to cheer about, right? Like we had some fanatical fans that were hoping for 6-6 in football, but it wasn't like every second felt like people were live or die, right? But to go from the positivity of football straight into the pit of despair. It was kind of disappointing, I think. I was pretty embarrassed watching Umar Ballo talk about the fans. And I obviously don't know Umar Ballo, but he seems like such a soft-spoken, kind-hearted kind of giant that just wants to win and tries his best. And I know that, there's a lot of money on the line. He's getting paid a lot of money, so you have these expectations, whatever. But listening to him talk about the way that the fan base was acting towards him, I just hope that this hire cleans the slate for everybody, the program, fans. I think that it was a bunch of years of just hostility that had just built up, coach, players, just different things that were happening. It just felt so negative and dark, similar to the way in kind of the later years of Tom Allen that I felt, where it just felt like nothing good could happen to me. And I kind of liked it. That's kind of you started not liked it, but that
Well, you
became
knew
the
that
normal.
something new was on the horizon at that point when things get to that level of bad.
Right. And I thought I had the most fun watching Indiana when Woodson finally decided I've had enough of this for whatever reason it actually was. I'm sure that we as fans had a lot to do with it. Watching them knowing that it was going to be fresh next year, it was the first time that I really cheered for Indiana to win the game. That's all that mattered. Like, they didn't have to win a certain way. They didn't have to do a certain thing. I just wanted them to win. And I didn't expect to be as torn up as I was when they didn't get picked on Sunday.
Yeah.
I texted my dad and he texted me almost simultaneously. Like, I did not expect to be this sad about this.
And I think you described it nearly perfectly. Two different things. First of all, the pit of despair, going back to the transition from football season to basketball. I found it very hard on this show, especially once Indiana had bowed out and lost to Notre Dame in the playoff, knowing that I was kind of moving away from the football season that was so fun into something that was already getting to a new level of disgusting with, I mean, basketball had just gotten ransacked in the battle for Atlantis by all but one of the teams they faced down there. And that was kind of the beginning of the end, I feel like. And that was still going on in the midst of all of the good things with football. So it was kind of easy to ignore it. But once football was done, and, when you cover Indiana sports, you kind of have to dig into it no matter when it's fun or not. And so
yeah,
it was very difficult to enjoy at times. But then you get to the point to where you knew Woodson was going to step down, as you mentioned. And I've been saying this on the show, or at least I did a few weeks back whenever the things were initially looking up for Indiana. I was saying Mike Woodson was letting his hair down, even though he doesn't have any hair. He was letting his beard down. And I'm honestly probably patting myself on the back a little too much with that just because I think it is kind of funny. I'm probably not actually that funny.
Keep going. I love it.
But the him and the team themselves, it just felt like everything was so much more relaxed. And at that point, like, they were playing, at least you thought they were playing into the NCAA tournament. And I'm kind of with you. Like, once I saw that they weren't going to be playing in Dayton for the first four, because that's kind of where everybody thought they were going to land at that point, I was pretty convinced that they weren't going to get one of the better at-large bids. And so that's kind of where we're at. But now we've moved on. I don't think we would know, but we wouldn't be sitting right here with the Darian DeVries stuff happening if Indiana made the NCAA tournament, of course. We'd be writing that out as long as that would have gone. But now, of course, I guess prior now to the release of the show, he's already been introduced as the new Indiana head coach.
Yeah. They made the announcement. I feel like this morning, I'm an avid Twitter or X user, so that continues. It felt like everybody was throwing out a million names, the Iowa State guy, the Clemson guy, heard all kinds of different, no one had any clue. And then at like 4:00, there were some rumblings, and I'm thinking that it's, the same stuff that it always is. No one has any idea. My dad actually called me. I'm going to talk a lot about my dad on the show, apparently. Called me at like 3:00 and said that there was something on one of the websites. And he's like, I don't know. I kind of like that. And that was as far as we got. And then 2 hours later, he was announced as the head coach. Like, it happened really slow and then all at once in Dolson fashion. And I think it's good to get your guy now, give him the entire offseason, go out and get players. You got a big NIL pot. I did think, it's just the way of college sports now, but pretty interesting. I'm sure you've talked about it already, that He turned down Iowa because of their NIL pool.
One of the worst in the Big Ten, apparently, which is
and
it's not insane because, I mean, it is Iowa, and I don't know if their pool for basketball is different than football or if that's for their entire collective in general. But either way, it's still, I mean, that's the name of the game. If you don't have NIL, you're not going to attract the big name guys anymore. Not that Darian DeVries is the biggest of names, but he is a guy who was previously at a Power 5 school.
Yeah, and I actually, as I'm processing this all right now, right? Like, I don't really know anything about him, but
none of us really do, honestly.
Right. But when you think about West Virginia, and this is more Bob Huggins' teams, I haven't watched West Virginia in a long time, but you think about what the West Virginia uniform represents. It's toughness, it's grit. They play really, really hard, and they have a bunch of players that'll hit you in the face. And that kind of felt like what Indiana was missing this year. I feel like they had guys that played hard. I mean, if you can say whatever you want about Trey Galloway, Anthony Leal, Luke Goody, Umar Ballo, even to a certain extent at the end of the season when he got in shape, those guys played really hard, but they all lacked. Trey Galloway probably had the most of it, like kind of that killer tenacity input, but I think he was limited by his skill set. He's a phenomenal player, but not skilled.
He's more so somebody that you would like. You wouldn't want to rely on him as much as Indiana had to.
He's a facilitator. He's a phenomenal facilitator. He'd be a great on-ball kind of leader of the offense. Excuse me. Jeez. I had some tortilla chips. That was a corn chip that just went in my throat.
Delicious.
Delicious. But you just didn't have kind of that 2-guard or 3-guard that all these elite teams have, that when you need a bucket and it's late in the shot clock, you can kind of go 1-4 low and let him take his man off the dribble and get a good shot, or at least create something. They just didn't really have that kind of killer. And I think somebody like West Virginia, or a team like West Virginia, just when you think about them, maybe they don't have that elite number 1 overall pick in the NBA draft, but they create offense with kind of some chaos. They just play really hard. And I think that's the identity that I want to see in Indiana. I want them to be just tough and annoying to play. That's the most fun Indiana teams, when it just feels like they're never out of it. Like there's a couple times this year, obviously, where they were out of it pretty early, and that's
the thing. They got blown out a lot too, and I don't want to dwell on that too much, but that was one of the most maddening things of all, is they were just getting their ass beat.
Right. That was probably when you're looking at the committee, and I've seen some funny stuff about the UNCAD, but we don't have to dive into that. But when they're thinking of like what they're talking about in the room when they're trying to pick teams. It's really hard to look past. I know it was months ago. Teams changed. They were playing better at the end of the year, but it's really hard to see 6 or 7 different times that they lost by 30 points. Like, that's a hard – nobody kept Indiana out of the tournament except for Indiana, it kind of feels like. And that it's a hard reality. I want to blame everybody else, but that's just kind of the reality. I saw that they haven't made the tournament in 7 of 9 years. Like, it's time to – if we're not going to win with a bunch of high-paid guys, which we'll continue to have high-paid guys, but I want some tenacity. I want somebody to go out there be nasty. I want some scuffles. Like, you have to impose an attitude, especially playing in the Big Ten, where we play just a different brand of basketball than the SEC. I was talking about this the other day. The SEC gets out, they run, they got athletes everywhere. Ball's moving really quick, and they score 1 million points. The Big Ten is more physicality. There's a lot more post play where guys are just big and leaning into each other. You got to have some toughness, and I think at least the West Virginia brand is that. So I'm excited that, and I know he's only there a year, but you bring some of that to Indiana and have a big backing and hopefully a fan base that'll support you. I think that's the hardest thing for any team nowadays is, and I'm kind of rambling right now, but having fans that will back you no matter what. And it may be even harder for Indiana. They saw what Kurt Signetti could do in one season. So the expectations are going to be sky high with that budget. He's got an uphill battle for sure, but I think that given where he's come from, He's young. He's got a lot to prove. He's going to go out and recruit and do the things that are necessary, hopefully, to bring in the right kind of guys.
You expected.
Right?
I think it's going to be. I'm not going to say too much more on this because we'll move on. But he's good. He doesn't have to come in and do the Signetti thing. He doesn't have to come in and rile up everyone. Like that's something totally Indiana football, something totally different than Indiana basketball and what it's meant to people over the years. He has to come in and treat this like it's all business. That's what Indiana fans want. Like come in, do what you're supposed to do, and win. It's really about the simplest way you can put it. If he does that. If he does both of those things, three, I don't know how many things I just mentioned. It wasn't very much, but if he does that, then you'll make people happy. You don't need to go on Big Ten media days and have something ridiculous come out of your mouth like Kurt Signetti would. That was fun for football, and honestly, it'll still be fun. It's probably going to happen in a much lesser extent moving forward for Indiana football, but in year one, all of that was necessary.
It was calculated in Indiana football where everybody thought you sucked. Indiana basketball is not the blue blood that it once was. I think you're kidding yourself. You look at the championships. Okay, that was 50 years ago. We're not that team anymore. We do need some life injected into the program, but to come out and talk like that, it's just unnecessary as a basketball coach. So I don't expect him to be flashy. I expect him to hit the ground running, be in the shadows, do what he needs to do, and he's going to wait until probably the exhibition games to show kind of what he's got. I wouldn't expect much out of him before that.
Yeah. And we'll go and move on. So the reason I'm not going to dive straight in. It's going to be very quick. The main reason I was going to have you on, Mitchell, we were going to kind of do Mitchell's, wild card bracket picks. As somebody who, I'm not going to call him uneducated because that would be mean, but he's going to kind of give you, for those of you who are still trying to fill out your brackets, he's going to give you who he thinks is going to make the Final Four from each of the four regions based solely on what is going on in his brain and what he thinks of different teams, not necessarily their personnel, but about the school. Because sometimes the Final Fours are pretty whack. They're not what you expect them to be. So if you're trying to go a little off the, out of left field for your bracket, that's what he's going to deliver here shortly. And then before that, though, since Indiana football is in spring practice, I'm going to ask you one question. At this point, when you're with Signetti going into year two, what is spring practice like now? Where last year he was trying to establish stuff. What is it? What's different between year one and year two with what's going on, especially after the success he just had, of course?
Yeah, this is, I would imagine this is a lot easier spring for the players and a much tougher spring for the coaches. The standard is set and you've got some guys coming back that helps, but managing players kind of thinking you got it. I had a coach in college, Kevin Johns. I talk about him all the time. One of my favorite people in the world. He would always say, just when you think you got it, you're about to get it. And ensuring that every practice maintains the intensity when it's cold on March 19th or whatever it is, ensuring the intensity and making sure that players understand that, this is a new season, right? There are guys in here this is a different team than it was last year. We're not going to surprise. Last year, we snuck up on some people early, for sure. Not by the end of the season, but you can sneak up on people when you have that much talent that nobody knows about. They can prepare your Big Ten, your Indiana, you've got some athletes, but I don't think anybody really anticipated what was happening around the Nebraska, Washington time in the way that it was going to happen. Now you're not going to do that. So maintaining that kind of standard of intensity throughout practices when the season seems really far away is tough. But there's also the flip side of the players. For the players, we always used to say positions are won in the spring and kept in the fall. So there's going to be some serious competition at a lot of positions because now you've attracted some talent from all over the place. They saw how much fun you guys were having. They saw you were having some success. The talent ratcheted up a little bit. So now some guys that maybe last year that got to practice 8 or 9 a spring and we're like, okay, I'm probably good, right? Like I'm going to play. Probably not the case anymore. Those practices, there's 15 or 14, however many they have now, feels like a lot, right? You have a lot of time. They go quick. And if you haven't done what you need to do in the spring to win your position, I don't care who you are. If you're Mendoza at quarterback, you better win your position. Everybody thinks you're going to be the starter, but I think Cignetti's shown that he don't really care. He's going to play the best guy, and I would imagine those practices, just based on the little bit that I've seen, they actually closed access. I was going to go down there for a couple of practices, and I don't think that we're allowed, which is fine with me.
Was that how it was at this point last year, or is it different?
No, we could. I've always been able to call up somebody there and just say, hey, I want to come down. Typically on Saturdays, they have scrimmages. That was when it was technically open to some people, but nothing's open till the spring game. I would imagine that those practices are held very tight for the exact reasons that I'm talking about. They want to maintain the highest level of intensity. They want to keep this kind of level, right? And to do that, you have to have zero outside distractions. We need to be all focused on us. If we're going to be as good as we can be and get to the places that we want to get to, we weren't there last year. We played a Notre Dame team that was just better. That's just the reality. They were bigger, they were better, they were more physical. We have a big, significant step that teams have spent 20, 30, 40 years where we were. Penn State kind of broke through, but Penn State's been at this level for a long time where they're really, really good. And then they don't win anything. They get really, really good recruits. They have really good coaches. And then they don't win anything. It's just really hard to get to those levels that Ohio State reaches, that Georgia reaches, that Alabama was at for a long time. It's a different caliber of practice, different caliber of meeting. And to do that, you have to maintain kind of elite focus on yourself, especially in the spring when those jobs are up for grabs. That was a long-winded answer, but
no. That's
yeah.
Now I'm going to cough on it. I'm going to turn my microphone off while I do this.
I'm telling you,
something went down the wrong pipe. I don't know what it was.
Chicken.
Is that dry? Yeah. Before we started recording, I was trying to eat my dinner as quickly as I could because we've been doing a lot of recording again on a Tuesday night with all this basketball stuff going on. But hey, I know I've already kept you longer than I initially planned on it. So we can do this. It didn't have to be rushed, but we'll do this quick. But my
analysis is going to be way shorter than anything.
Yeah, you're not going to be talking for 5 minutes on why Bruce Pearl's going to take Auburn to the national championship or whatever you're going to decide.
I think they're pretty good. That's my analysis.
So we'll go we'll go to the. I guess it doesn't tell me. Oh yeah, it's the South region, the one that Auburn is in. Who do you have coming out in that particular region?
I did watch Auburn one time. My analysis for them is the godfather of Maggie is a graduate. My cousin Luke graduated from Auburn. I think they're going to come out because I like Luke, and he'd be very happy. And the thing that pops out to me, and everybody talks about this, one of the toughest draws ever for Louisville, who had an unbelievable season and just got absolutely hosed. The worst seed in maybe history, worse than North Carolina getting in, is Louisville.
I'll say something real quick on that. You look at Clemson, who they beat twice, and they have nearly identical records. They got a 5 seed. Doesn't make any sense.
Makes no sense. And to get paired with a Creighton team that's beat a lot of good teams, I think, and then have to go play Auburn, who's the best team in the whole tournament, just really – and I have a soft spot for Pat Kelsey. He's a Charleston guy like me.
Okay.
And he was ratcheting – when I was living down there, he was like literally similar to how he does in Louisville, probably hitting the streets, promoting
Yes, he was doing that, 100%.
And it's – I think at the beginning, people were kind of making fun of him because, like, no way this is genuine, but it is real. Like, that's the way he is. He did it in Charleston. They went 30-3 one year, made the NCAA tournament. Like, I have a soft spot for that guy. If Louisville was in any other side of the bracket here, I would probably pick them to go to the Final Four, but they got to play Auburn. I think Auburn is going to win the national championship. That's a little sneak peek. And that's for Luke. Luke, if you're listening, you're welcome. That's my very unintelligent analysis.
Let's go down to the West, where Florida is the number 1 seed. You also have former Indiana basketball candidate Ben McCollum, Drake, in that region as well. He was originally, kind of still is, one of my dark horses. But what say you? Who comes out of that region?
I don't even know who's in this. I haven't watched Florida once. I think they're good. Obviously, they're a 1 seed. People seem to like them. I've heard some people say they're playing the best basketball in the country. I don't know what that means. So they're going to lose.
It's always that team, though, that's quote unquote playing the best basketball in the country. They never live up to it in March.
You like Drake, you said?
I like Drake as a dark horse, being an 11. Ben McCollum right there.
I don't know who that is, but
he was one of the front runners to be Indiana's next head coach before Darian DeVries.
Oh, that's
arrived.
the coach. I thought this was a player.
Oh no, it's a head coach.
Oh, okay. Well, I don't
better though.
I don't see. I'm telling you, this is some serious high-level intelligence analysis. Go nowhere else than In Touch with Indiana Sports for your NCAA tournament bracket needs. I'm going Texas. I think Texas Tech's going to win that bracket, and that's just because Bobby Knight, RIP. We got a new coach at Indiana. He's probably clapping somewhere. I don't know where he's at, but from somewhere.
Okay.
That's Texas Tech. Texas Tech's going to play Auburn in the Final Four.
Texas Tech to Auburn in the Final Four. To the East region where Duke is the number 1 seed. You've also got Wisconsin from the Big Ten, Oregon from the Big Ten in that region. Who do you like in the East?
I watched Oregon whoop up the Hoosiers pretty good a couple of times. I think they're really good. They got a couple guards that are just nasty. I think Oregon's the best team that I've seen in this, and the reason for that is they're the only team that I've seen in this. So I think Oregon's going to make the Final Four. Duke is going to lose to Baylor. And the reason that I don't think Duke's going to go do what they probably should do is they didn't hire Kevin Johns as their head football coach. So
it's a great answer. It's a great answer.
They don't deserve it.
Finally, in the Midwest, where Houston, former Indiana
Kelvin Sampson, baby.
Sampson, yeah, he's the one there. Purdue, of course, they're the 4 playing High Point, the first time they've been in the NCAA tournament. You've also got the Cats, number 3, Kentucky. Pretty interesting bracket, honestly, if you ask me.
I have a soft spot for Tennessee. One of my best friends got some bad news today, and he is a huge Tennessee fan. Tennessee is going to beat Oregon in the Final Four to play Auburn in the national championship. That's what I think.
There you have it. And I may even make a graphic for this and tweet it out later on.
Oh, I should have picked some wild nonsense.
That would really drive some ridiculous nonsense. I mean, there's still time. Is there something you want to change your mind on? I mean, I don't.
No.
Yeah, stick with
I like what I got. So who did I even pick? Auburn.
You've got Auburn. You've got Texas Tech. You've got
Oregon,
and Tennessee. You may still get clowned a little bit for that, honestly, but it would be totally calculated.
I have sound logic. The only team I've watched in this, I guess I watched Wisconsin, but didn't Indiana beat Wisconsin?
No, they didn't get whooped, but they were getting whooped in the beginning of that, and then at the beginning of the game, they lost by like 11 or 12.
Oh well, I hate them anyways. Oregon, I've watched twice. Done a lot of deep dive into Oregon, 2 full games. They're tough. That's why I'm picking them. Tennessee, I think my reasoning is sound. Can't pick Duke because they should have hired Kevin Johns. Auburn, godfather of my child's a graduate there. Yeah. Texas Tech, Bob Knight's going to will them to the Final Four. And Tennessee, got to go for Sammy Adams, the homie.
And you got Auburn winning the whole thing, you said.
I do.
There you go.
As just one more slap in the face to Indiana fans because Bruce Pearl wanted to come to Indiana last year.
If I remember to do it later, I'll put a graphic up and put your wonderful little face next to it. But we'll wait and see.
Oh, Mitchell, man!
As always, I appreciate your extended stay here on In Touch with Indiana Sports. And as we get closer to the spring game, I think we're about a month away from it. We'll definitely check in with you once again when we get to that time.
Oh yeah. Can't wait, dude. Appreciate you having me on.
All right. Appreciate Mitchell Paige as always. And that's about going to, man, does that wording of what I just said even make sense? If not, who cares? We're going to go ahead and wrap up today's edition of In Touch with Indiana Sports. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Again, leave a comment. Let me know how you feel about the new hire amongst whatever else you may want to comment. And we'll go over as many of those as we can on Friday. Be sure to hit that subscribe button if you haven't already on the Hoosier Illustrated YouTube channel. And check out all of the content being shown on HoosierIllustrated.com right now. Between Alec, between Drew, Kyler, Dylan, everybody who is on the site right now, there's plenty of stuff being posted on the new hire for the Hoosiers. So check that out if you can't get enough of it. We appreciate you as always. And until Friday, this has been another edition of In Touch with Indiana Sports, powered by HoosierIllustrated.com.